All right, strap in everybody. Today we are diving deep into global value chains.
GVCs.
GVCs, that's right. These things impact pretty much everything you own.
They really do.
And to help us unravel these GVCs, we'll be looking closely at Chapter 6 from International Business Strategy and Cross-Cultural Management, an applied approach.
It's a fantastic chapter.
It is.
It really breaks down how companies around the world, all these different countries, work together to bring us the products that we use every day in this globalized world.
It really does. And this chapter is brought to us by an all-star team of authors. Nicole Franziska Richter,
She's lead author.
Jesper Stranskov,
Yes.
Sen Hoff,
Uh-huh.
and Vasil Taras.
They're all experts.
They are in international business and cross-cultural management.
Absolutely.
So before we get lost in the weeds, let's nail down a definition. What exactly is a global value chain?
Okay, so picture a product,
Like
like your smartphone.
okay.
It doesn't just magically appear in the store, right? It starts as raw materials, maybe mine in one country. Then those materials get processed and refined, probably in a different country. And then every step along the way, from design and manufacturing to marketing and getting it into your hands.
Distribution.
Yeah, distribution. All of that adds value to the product. And this whole journey, often spanning multiple countries, that is the GVC.
It's like a global relay race, except instead of speed, they're passing the baton of
Value and ultimately profits
Exactly.
at each stage.
Now, the authors illustrate this perfectly with a real-world example in Box 6.1. It breaks down the entire journey of a smartphone.
From those raw materials all the way to your pocket.
It's crazy when you think about it.
It is. All those players involved in the process, a complex network of companies and countries.
All orchestrated through this, seemingly invisible network, a GVC.
Absolutely.
Now, to visualize how value is distributed along a GVC, the authors introduced this really interesting concept.
The smiling curve.
The smiling curve. And this isn't just some fancy term. It has some serious implications for companies.
Right. It really highlights that the company is at the beginning and the end of the chain.
The ones doing the designing, the branding, the marketing.
Yes, they often capture the lion's share of the profits.
Yeah.
While those in the middle, mainly the manufacturers.
The ones doing the heavy lifting.
Exactly.
They're often squeezed, stuck with smaller margins.
They are, but it's important to remember that the smiling curve, it's not static.
Oh, it's changing.
It is. You see, emerging economies are stepping up.
Okay.
They're moving beyond just manufacturing. You're
Interesting.
taking on more design roles, even branding.
Wow.
So this shift is making the whole landscape more competitive.
So it's not just about cheap labor anymore.
No, not at all.
It's becoming a more level playing field.
In a way, yes.
That's fascinating. And just to add fuel to the fire, new technologies and these growing concerns about sustainability,
Yes, those
are starting to reshape GVCs in ways we're just beginning to grasp.
Absolutely.
So we've got this global dance of value creation happening with profit shifting and power dynamics in flux.
It's a dynamic system.
It is. But for companies navigating this whole thing, what are the key strategic choices? What are the big decisions they have to make?
I think it boils down to two fundamental questions.
Okay.
What should a company control directly? And where in the world should those activities happen?
Location, location, location.
Right. And the answers to those questions can be drastically different depending on the industry, the product.
The company's goals.
Exactly. There's no one-size-fits-all strategy here.
Nope. Now, the chapter cleverly breaks down these strategic choices into 3 dimensions: length of the value chain, geographic distribution, and governance model.
3 key dimensions.
So let's break them down. Starting with length. What exactly does that refer to in the context of GVCs?
Okay, so imagine a spectrum.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
On one end, you have companies controlling every step of the process, from raw materials to the final product. That's a long chain.
A lot of control.
It often involves a high degree of vertical integration.
Right.
On the other end, you have companies focusing on just one or a few specific activities.
They outsource the rest.
Yes, that's a shorter chain.
So it's like a sliding scale of control from we do everything to we specialize in this one thing.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
And each approach comes with its own pros and cons, right?
Of course.
More control might mean higher quality, but it also probably means higher costs
Exactly.
and less flexibility to adapt if the market changes.
Right. So companies need to carefully consider the trade-offs when deciding how much of that chain they want to own and manage.
Okay, so length is all about control. What about geographic distribution? That's the second dimension, right?
Yes, that's all about where things happen.
Like, where are the factories? Where are the design studios?
Exactly. Are they all concentrated in the company's home country? Or are they spread out across the globe? Again, it's a spectrum.
Yeah.
And companies have to think about things like labor costs, proximity to their markets, access to specialized skills or resources.
Like a global game of chess.
Yeah. Strategically placing your pieces for maximum advantage.
Love that analogy. And then there's the third dimension, governance,
Governance.
which sounds a bit formal.
It does a bit.
So what does it actually mean in the context of GVCs?
It's all about the relationships a company forms with other players in the chain.
Oh,
Like, how much control do they have over their partners and suppliers? The chapter outlines 5 main governance models: market, modular, relational, captive, and hierarchical.
okay, 5 models. That's a lot to digest. Can you give us a quick rundown of each one?
Sure. The market model is the most hands-off.
Okay.
Companies simply buy and sell stuff on the open market.
Like a free-for-all,
Kind of, yeah. It offers a lot of flexibility.
but not much control, right?
Then there's the modular model.
Modular.
You contract with specialized suppliers.
Okay.
They provide specific components or services based on preset specifications.
So it's like assembling a product from pre-made building blocks.
Exactly.
They're tapping into external expertise, but you still have some control over the final product.
Right. Then you have the relational model, which is all about building closer, more collaborative relationships.
More like partnerships,
Exactly.
based on trust,
Mm-hmm.
shared information, working together to solve problems.
Yes. It's a win-win situation.
And then there's the captive model, which sounds a bit more, shall we say, intense,
Yeah, in this model, you have a dominant company calling the shots.
dictating prices in turn.
Right. It's more of a take it or leave it scenario for the supplier.
Gotcha. And finally, there's the hierarchical model,
That's the most extreme form of control.
top-down management.
The company owns and operates pretty much everything in the value chain.
Like a well-oiled machine, under their complete control.
Exactly.
So these 5 governance models, they represent different levels of control and influence within the GVC, right?
Yes. It's fascinating how companies pick their approach.
Based on their own needs and goals.
Right. And Box 6.3 gives us some real-world examples of how these models play out.
Oh, with companies like
IKEA, Apple,
Boeing.
big names.
It's a small country with a big reputation for craftsmanship.
That's right.
Okay, I'm ready. Take it away.
EasyCo's story began with a vision.
Okay.
The vision of their founder, Carl Toosby.
What was his big idea?
Toosby wanted to create shoes that were not only stylish,
Okay.
but also incredibly comfortable and durable.
You wanted it all.
He did.
So this vision, it led him to take a different approach.
Very different. Instead of relying on external suppliers and manufacturers,
The typical route in the shoe industry.
right, he believed the key to achieving his vision
Okay.
was to control the entire process.
Wow. Everything.
From sourcing the leather
Okay, yeah.
to overseeing the final stitching.
That's a bold move.
It is, especially for a new company.
Yeah, the challenges they must have faced.
Oh, definitely. For starters, it required a huge investment.
Yeah, you got to build your own tanneries.
You've got to acquire manufacturing facilities, set up a global distribution network.
It's not just about making shoes. It's about building an entire infrastructure.
Exactly, a whole ecosystem.
They were basically betting the farm on this vision.
Pretty much. And at a time when the footwear industry was trending in the opposite direction,
Correct.
outsourcing, specialization,
So they were swimming against the current.
they were. But Toosby was convinced. Their focus on quality, their control,
That it would pay off.
and it seems he was right. EasyCo is still a major player
Globally,
known for their comfy, stylish shoes.
what specific benefits did they get from this vertical integration strategy? What were the big wins?
Well, one of the biggest was consistent quality across the whole supply chain.
Okay.
Because they owned the tanneries, they could choose the best hides.
Oh, so they weren't at the mercy of suppliers.
Exactly. And they controlled the tanning process.
Ensuring that soft, durable leather.
Right. It wasn't just about the materials.
Wow.
They also invested heavily in their manufacturing, developing new techniques, training their workers to the highest standards.
Creating a culture of excellence.
Exactly. They wanted every pair of shoes.
To live up to that reputation for comfort and craftsmanship.
Absolutely. And that commitment went all the way to their retail operations.
Oh, they had their own stores.
They did, giving them control over the customer experience.
So they were thinking holistically.
Yeah, the entire journey, from sourcing the leather to someone walking out of the store with a pair of EasyCos.
That's impressive.
Mm.
But I imagine there were some serious challenges as well.
Oh, yeah. Maintaining that level of control.
Across such a vast operation.
It's a tough job. One of the biggest hurdles was complexity.
Managing all those moving parts.
They had factories and tanneries in multiple countries.
Each with its own rules and regulations.
Cultures, business practices.
Coordinating that while keeping their standards high.
Must have been a logistical nightmare.
Like conducting an orchestra, but with factories and tanneries instead of musicians.
Yeah, something like that.
And beyond the logistics, there were financial pressures, right?
Of course. Maintaining that level of vertical integration is expensive.
You're shouldering the costs for every stage.
Raw materials to retail.
It's a high-risk, high-reward strategy.
For sure. But it seems to have worked for ECO.
They've struck that balance.
Maintaining their quality, their brand.
Navigating the complexities of a globalized world.
They've carved their own path.
Speaking of forging their own path,
Yeah.
the book talks about ECO's commitment to CSR.
Corporate social responsibility.
They've got this code of conduct outlining their commitment to ethical and sustainable practices.
Throughout their entire supply chain.
It's not just lip service, right? They're actually walking the walk.
They are. They've got tough environmental standards for their tanneries and factories.
Okay.
They work closely with their suppliers to ensure fair labor practices and safe working conditions.
That's great to hear.
It is, especially in an industry that's often been criticized for its labor practices.
It shows they're taking it seriously.
And consumers are demanding more transparency, more accountability.
It's not enough to just make a good product anymore.
You have to do good in the world, too.
And for ECO, it seems their CSR initiatives are good for business.
It's a win-win situation.
But we've talked about how complex their vertical integration model is.
Very complex.
Managing global operations, maintaining those ethical standards.
It's a big challenge.
So is it really sustainable in the long run?
That's the question, isn't it? The world is changing, and GVCs are changing with it.
New technologies,
Shifting preferences.
geopolitical uncertainties.
It's a lot to keep up with.
So what about the future of GVCs? What are the big trends that might disrupt things? How might those trends impact ECO?
Well, Buck 6.2 offers some interesting possibilities.
Give us the highlights.
It points to new technologies, digitalization.
Okay, what kind of technologies? Spill the beans.
Well, one of the biggest trends is automation.
Robots on the factory floor.
And artificial intelligence.
AI-powered logistics.
Exactly. And the impact on GVCs could be huge.
Wow.
Imagine production becoming more localized.
Okay.
Robots handling the tasks that were once done by humans in far-off factories.
So, made by robot instead of made in China.
It's a possibility, and this ties into another major force. Sustainability.
Sustainability.
It's not just a buzzword anymore.
It's a necessity.
Consumers want eco-friendly products.
Ethical sourcing.
Companies need to reduce their environmental impact.
So what concrete actions are we talking about? What are companies doing within their GVCs?
One thing is reducing their reliance on those long, complex supply chains.
About shortening them?
Because transportation contributes a lot to greenhouse gas emissions.
So sourcing and manufacturing closer to home,
Would make a big difference.
it's like a shift towards more regional, maybe even local production.
And that brings us to 3D printing.
Ah, the game changer.
Imagine printing custom-designed shoes right in your neighborhood.
That's wild. It really changes how we think about production and consumption.
It does. And it's not just technology. There's this growing emphasis on circular economy principles.
I've heard that term, but I'm not sure I fully grasp it.
So it's a model that's all about minimizing waste and maximizing resource use.
Throughout the entire life cycle of a product.
Yes. Instead of making, using, and discarding,
Yeah.
the circular economy tries to keep those materials in use.
Repairing, reusing, recycling.
Exactly, closing the loop.
In a more sustainable and efficient system.
It is, and it's going to change how GVCs are designed and managed.
Companies will have to rethink their entire approach.
Their supply chains, manufacturing, even their product designs.
Sounds like a huge undertaking.
It is, but it's essential.
For a sustainable future.
It will require collaboration between businesses, governments, and consumers.
So we've got all these tech advancements, sustainability concerns swirling around GVCs.
It's a whirlwind.
Let's bring it back to ECO.
Okay.
How might these trends affect their vertical integration model?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is.
On the one hand, their control over their supply chain could be an advantage.
For implementing sustainable practices,
Ethical sourcing?
they're ahead of the game on CSR.
Right. But their investment in all those physical facilities,
Tanneries, factories,
that could make them less adaptable.
to those rapid changes.
In technology, consumer preferences.
It's like they're a giant ship trying to navigate a narrow channel.
They might have trouble turning quickly enough.
So it's not just about maintaining control.
It's about knowing when to let go.
But they have a history of adaptation and innovation.
Right. They were early adopters of advanced manufacturing.
Their commitment to sustainability puts them ahead of the pack.
And they have this deep knowledge of the whole value chain.
They understand how all the pieces fit together.
Which is a huge asset.
So it's not about abandoning vertical integration.
It's about making it more flexible.
More responsive.
To the changing global market.
It's finding the right balance.
Between control and agility.
Between tradition and innovation.
They might explore partnerships.
With tech companies.
Maybe pilot programs for 3D printing.
Or even divesting certain parts of the chain.
The parts that aren't essential.
It's about collaborating, not just competing.
In today's world, you can't do it alone.
Working together towards a more sustainable future.
That's the key.
It's fascinating to see how all these forces are shaping global business.
And that's what makes the study of GVCs so captivating.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into the world of global value chains.
It's been a journey.
We've explored the inner workings of these networks.
From the smiling curve to ESO's unique approach.
I hope our listeners have a better understanding
of how these global systems work.
And how ECO has found success.
In a complex and dynamic market.
I want to leave everyone with one last thought.
Okay.
The ability to adapt and evolve.
In a constantly changing world.
It's not optional anymore.
It's essential.
Whether you're a global company like ECO or an individual navigating your own career.
You need to embrace change.
To seek out new knowledge. Never stop learning.
Keep diving deep.
Until next time, deep divers. All right, so we've been on this incredible journey through the world of global value chains.
Exploring all the different strategies, ECO's unique approach.
But now the big question is, can ECO's model really hold up with all these changes happening?
Right, all these winds of change blowing through the global business landscape.
Technology, sustainability.
Yeah.
It's like the ground is shifting under our feet.
It really is.
So let's play devil's advocate here.
Okay.
What could trip ECO up? What are some of the downsides of sticking so tightly to their vertical integration model?
Well, one risk is they could become too rigid, too inflexible. In a world that's demanding agility, speed, all their tanneries, factories, that infrastructure represents a massive investment.
It does.
But what if those assets become outdated?
Or consumer tastes change quickly.
Exactly. They could be stuck with all this stuff.
Like a dinosaur trying to keep up with a cheetah.
Yeah, and then there's the challenge of staying ahead of the tech curve.
Automation,
3D printing,
AI.
Those innovations could completely disrupt the industry.
And ECO needs to be ready.
Or risk falling behind.
So it's not just about maintaining control.
It's also about knowing when to let go.
Which is tough for a company like ECO.
Built on control.
But they have been good at adapting in the past.
They have. Early adopters of new manufacturing tech.
And their focus on sustainability, that's a big plus.
It is. They're ahead of the curve there.
Plus, they really understand the entire value chain.
From start to finish.
Which could be a huge advantage as they navigate these changes.
It could.
So maybe it's not about ditching vertical integration altogether.
But evolving it.
Making it more flexible, more responsive.
It's the demands of the market.
Finding that sweet spot.
Between control and agility.
Tradition and innovation.
Maybe exploring strategic partnerships.
With tech companies, maybe?
Maybe pilot programs, testing out 3D printing.
Potentially even getting rid of some parts of the chain.
The non-essential part.
It's about working with others, not just against them.
Collaborating, not just competing.
In today's world, it's all about connections.
Building networks, working together.
Toward a shared vision.
A more sustainable future.
It's amazing to see how all these things are shaping global business.
It really is. That's what makes GVCs so fascinating.
Well said. I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into this intricate world.
Global value chains.
We've unpacked how they work.
From the smiling curve to ECO's incredible journey.
Hopefully our listeners have a better understanding
of these complex global systems.
And maybe some insights
they can apply to their own lives.
I want to leave everyone with one final thought.
Okay.
In this constantly changing world, the ability to adapt,
to evolve,
it's not just a nice skill to have.
It's crucial.
Whether you're a big company or an individual.
You need to embrace change.
Keep learning, keep growing.
Keep exploring.
Until next time, deep divers.